So the next morning, at Black Buffalo's request, they went to visit his camp. It was about 4 miles up further, and when they arrived there, hundreds of people, men, women, children, were all lining the banks to see them come up. Lewis and Clark allowed women and children and some men to come onto the keel boat because they all wanted to see the keel boat. And after that had gone on, they went to the camp. When they got to the camp, there were over 100 teepees. It was a very large camp. It consisted of about 900 people. And so immediately Black Buffalo offers Lewis and Clark some women. A lot of these tribes were very much trade items, and Lewis and Clark, of course, declined. They were then carried in the late afternoon. They were carried on buffalo robes very ceremoniously into a very large tent for a council meeting, another council meeting, where even though they couldn't really understand too much of what they were saying, they were trying to work them for some more stuff, some more goods, which Lewis and Clark had kind of put their foot down. They were not going to allow these guys to bully them into giving them something. They had a long way to go, and their supplies had to last, and they didn't want to set the Sioux really controlled the river. And they wanted to make, if you're going to pass the river, you have to give them something, was their tradition. But Lewis and Clark wanted to make sure they understood that, no, not this time, not with us. You're not going to do that to us. And so they basically got nothing else out of Lewis and Clark. And that night, they had a ceremony and a dance. And Lewis and Clark realized that they had just won. Shut up, Ethan. You do this. That they had just won a war. They had been back from a battle with the Omaha Indians. They had killed 70 Omaha warriors, and they took 48 women and children as prisoners. This was very common too. And so they had, so they were celebrating this event, and they were celebrating by doing a scalp dance. And so they were dancing around the fire with drums and music, holding the 70 scalps of the Omahas that they had just killed. And Lewis and Clark started throwing some of the dancers carrots of tobacco. That had already become their tradition when they're being entertained to give them tobacco. One of the dancers felt that he hadn't gotten enough, and he threw into a rage, and he destroyed one of the drums, and then he started throwing the drums in the fire, and then he chilled out, and the dancing continued. Before they went to bed, the Indians again offered Lewis and Clark women to sleep with. Lewis and Clark, of course, declined. This is going to happen throughout their journey, and Lewis and Clark will always decline that situation. The men on the expedition will not decline that, but Lewis and Clark did. But anyhow, they in the morning they tried to leave, and they got stopped again. They grabbed onto the bowline again. They tried grabbing the mast on the pirogue. They said, "You can't go on." They asked them, Lewis and Clark, to stay one more night. They were just trying to get stuff out of them. And Lewis again got ready to light the cannon, and Black Buffalo told his men to back off, but Black Buffalo said, "You need to give us some tobacco." All they wanted was tobacco. So Lewis and Clark just kind of threw some tobacco onto the shore, and Black Buffalo waved them off, and Lewis and Clark were finally able to move on after this pretty treacherous situation. Goodbye. Bye-bye.